1 billion that she actually is worth now from singing. It actually came from her venture as a creative director for Puma and her fashion line, turning your side hustle to your main bustle. Jay-Z, who was arguably one of the first billionaires of hip hop, did not make the money from his music, but from his Tidal streaming service, clothing line, and brand of cognac, turning your side hustle to your main bustle. Ashton Kutcher, one of the highest paid actors in 2013 at 24 million, saw more than 5 times this amount from his venture capital investment gigs, turning your side hustle to your main bustle. Jessica Alba, who is famous for her role as Susan Storm in The Fantastic Four, saw real revenue from her skincare line estimated at a whopping 1.7 billion. Turning your side hustle to your main bustle. And we have so many behemoths who have done the same. Kendrick Delaney from the New Duff, Theodore Elliott with his Backnick print fashion line, Ryan Payne in fitness, Nolan Carey with Door to Door, Atario Mitchell, Bahama Striping. There are so many entrepreneurs that I can actually name, many of who have passed through the annals of the Access Accelerator, whose vision and passion and talent turned their side hustle into their main bustle. So how do we do this or how do we emulate this passion? What are the benefits and drawbacks of side hustles? The benefits are you make extra money, you gain expertise, it fosters creativity, there are limitless opportunities, you work as much as you want, you're your own boss, and you get to enjoy flexibility. The drawbacks then are that it's time consuming, may be costly to maintain, there's always the risk of failure associated, it may be stressful, and there may be low investor confidence. So let's give you a roadmap for this transition from your side hustle to your main bustle. Hustle in silence and let your success make the noise. Hustle until you no longer have to introduce yourself. I had a boss when I sold insurance who always said, if after 6 months of being in the industry, you still have to introduce yourself and say, hey, hi, I'm Leo Rolle and I sell insurance, then you're not doing a good job. So you have to make that name for yourself. You have to hustle so well that you no longer have to introduce yourself. When people see you, they know that you're synonymous with financial services, or you're synonymous with baking, or you're synonymous with speech writing. So step 1, setting strategic goals. Goals are kind of like your marching orders. They essentially give you a direction and are set based on your aspirations. Goal achievement is a marathon and not a sprint. People feel like, I set this goal to lose 20 pounds within 3 months and I didn't lose it, and so I'm a failure. No, it's a marathon, not a sprint. SMART goals have to be both time-stamped and measurable. Having an accountability partner helps because what that person does is it keeps you online or keeps you in tandem with what you said you would do when you said you would do it. Constant checkups or revision of your goal are also important. So once you've set that goal for yourself, prioritize. What does prioritize look like? We expend time and money on the things that are important to us. Prioritizing to move your side hustle to your main bustle requires you to give up time, which you'll have to obviously steal from elsewhere, whether that be sleeping, partying, social media, whatever it is that you do that expends or that takes time, you have to now expend that time or transition that time to whatever that side hustle is. It requires shifting resources, money, from trivial things to your hustle in order to make it work. Market research. One of the biggest pitfalls that clients who come before a credit committee or before an SBDC for A squared for funding is that they have the idea, they have the expertise, the financials may be right, but the problem lies in market research. You have to be able, if you are going to turn your side hustle to a main bustle, to narrow down your niche. What is a niche? A niche is a segmentation of a market that you plan to sell to or that you plan to access. Conduct surveys, questionnaires, sampling, whatever it is that you need to do to ensure that you research the trends and ensure that the market that you're trying to get into is actually viable. Businesses operate to solve problems. And so obviously in your business plan, when we look at it, we look to see what the problem statement is. What is the problem that your business, once launched, is looking to eradicate or to alleviate from the Bahamian economy? That can only be done with research from the market. You want to also research opportunities. What are the strategic alliances that you can get? If you're in the tourism industry, do you plan to partner with cruise ships? Do you plan to partner with tour guides? What are you going to do? What are some of those gaps that you're planning to fill with your product and service? Is there a gap that's needed? Or is there a gap that you recognize from the opportunities that you've researched? What are the MOUs, the memorandums of understanding that you have with other businesses or other persons in the industry that can assist you when you transition? Do you have letters of intent saying that this is a big company or a conglomerate that from day one will operate or will help me to meet my needs or to meet the needs of my organization from the letter of intent that I have secured with them? All of these things are important because even though, and I always look at it as a way, even though it may not be my personal funds that I'm expending in your business, I want to ensure that your business succeeds. And so I have a vested interest in ensuring that that succeeds, especially in the department that I sit. Because I now take on, once the clients have been funded, they come to post-funding, and that then means that I have the whole conglomerate of the company's funded clients that I need to ensure are meeting their goals, are prioritizing. And so if the market research is not done adequately in the beginning, then chances are the business is not going to be as successful as the business plan says that it will. Analyze success stories or cases. We talked about them, we opened with them. Talked about the Rihannas, the Jay-Z, the Jessica Albas, the Ashton Kutchers, the Bahamian aspects. Analyze those case studies. You know, a word to the wise is sufficient, and experience is always the best teacher. So look at those persons who made their or transitioned their side hustle to their main hustle and see what it is that they did well. Incorporate some of those things that they did well and avoid some of the things that they didn't do well. Become a disruptor. I always like to use, if I'm speaking about persons who are transitioning from an industry to another industry or transitioning from a side hustle in this instance to a main hustle, the example of the red ocean, blue ocean strategy. What the red ocean, blue ocean strategy does or says is that the red ocean is obviously one that has lots of competition, easy to get into, everyone fighting for the same slice of the economic pie. When you transition into a blue ocean, you are there alone. You are doing what you're doing better than anyone else, and you'll become a disruptor to that industry. How do you become a disruptor? Let's think of some industries that have become disruptors. Uber or Lyft has disrupted the taxi cab industry. Airbnb has disrupted the hotel industry. What can you do, or how can you create such uniqueness of your business aspect or your business idea from your side hustle that will become a disruptor once you get into that industry? Be creative, be smart in your research, be innovative with your products and services, create or foster market segmentation on niches that were not even there before. All of these things helps you once you transition your side hustle into your main hustle. You can't say to me, or you can't say to a body, especially at the SBDC, okay, I am selling food, and so I'm a good cook, and this is why I want to become a chef or why I want to open my own restaurant. What are you going to do differently to go into a saturated market such as food and beverage that your other competitors are not already doing? Are you going to have uniqueness of menus? Are you going to have tastes or created menus that are or created dishes that are tailored only to you? Are you going to have options that are not available to other restaurants today? What is it that you're going to do? Why should we expend money into your side hustle to make it your main bustle if you cannot show us if you're going to create new niches, incorporate the red ocean, blue ocean strategy, and be different than the competitors that you met there, or become a disruptor to the industry itself? Nurture and develop your hustle. Business essentials are important. You have to care for your idea, your patent, your product, your services. Continual refinement of your business processes and procedures to reflect industry practices. What we find when persons are transitioning their side hustle to their main bustle and looking to get funding to ensure that they open their own business is that they have the idea, but the business plan or the follow through and questioning doesn't speak to them nurturing it. So they plant the seed and never go back to water it or to germinate it and to make sure that it grows, it expands, and it's continuously developing. So they have to nurture, or you have to nurture your business process, nurture your desired outcomes, and nurture the business essentials in order to transition your side hustle to your main bustle. And finally, you want to monitor for improvement. What do we mean by monitor for improvement? What are your aspects, or what is your strategy to ensure growth? How do you know when to pivot? One of the biggest problems we have found with business owners or persons who have transitioned their side hustle to their main bustle, which have required them to go back to back to a 9 to 5, is that they don't know when to pivot. It's like the frog in the boiling hot pot of water that sits in the cold water, and when it becomes to boil, they don't realize that the temperature has changed until they've died. People are so tied to their business concept or the idea that they don't know when to transition. I'll give you an example. We had a client who started off selling food. When that industry went south, what she had to then do was start off selling packaged lunches. She had to complete deliveries. She transitioned into a hookah lounge. She did so many various aspects, still tied to her business, but she knew that she needed to pivot in order to remain viable and to stay sustainable in an economy that was not really assisting her right then and there. So we always look in your business plan, I always ask the question, what do you plan to do? Or what is your contingency plan should the industry change or the economy change, or should there be a grave change in circumstance in your business? And usually it takes persons for a loop because they didn't think of it before time. But you have to think progressively. How will I grow this business? How will I pivot if it means that the economy that no longer fosters or is no longer supporting the business that I'm in? And you have to be able to monitor for enhancement. You have to listen to what your clients are saying. You have to listen to what the market is saying. You have to listen to what research is saying. And doing all of these things helps the business to grow, helps to tell you when to pivot, and it enhances your brand or your recognizability, thereby enhancing loyalty and transitioning successfully your side hustle to your main bustle. Questions?
Thank you so much, Mr. Rolle. So we do have 2 initial questions. The first one is, what type of plan should I create for myself before I leave my job? Is there a formula for savings and the amount I should need, or should I work part-time before I commit?
That's a good question, and thank you for whoever asked. What we always say when it comes to persons transitioning and leaving a job, you have to create a visionary plan. Having the idea of saying, okay, I can sew well, and so I'm going to leave my job tomorrow to go and sew, doesn't quite pan out or doesn't quite come to fruition when it comes to transitioning that side hustle. You have to be strategic and intentional. What you need to start doing is looking at the market trends. What are the things that I spoke about Theodore Elliott, and the reason I mentioned him is because he's someone that I know personally, as well as someone who I've watched transition from or transition his side hustle to then, I guess, for lack of a better word, displaying his work in the royal palace. And so what you have to do is to know the industry. Look at the trends that are happening today. Start saving. We would say at the SBDC, a conservative amount is 10% of your disposable income. But what you can do if you're really serious about it is start transitioning disposable income from things like maybe partying, shopping. There are so many things that we expend funds on that can be channeled into something else, especially if you're trying to do it on a side hustle level. But I would say research the industry, create a plan, have a business plan, even if that means you've had this business plan for 10 years and you constantly review it every year. Create that plan. The plan gives you a roadmap. It tells you where you want to go. It's almost, I always use the example of buying a new piece of equipment. The first thing we do is open the instruction manual. Why? Because it tells us how we get from a box full of pieces to the finished product. And your business plan does essentially the same. How do you plan to grow your side hustle into your main bustle? And so you need that business plan, you need your market research, you need to ask persons or experts in the industry that you're trying to get into. What is it that they've done? What is it that they've done well? You need to understand financials. I don't know how to say it any differently. We have clients who, of course, may have accountants, and so they may not necessarily have prepared their own financials, but you have to be able to understand what is happening, understand the cost of goods sold, understand the net profit ratios or margins, understand how the persons who prepared them got there. Otherwise, you're setting yourself up for a downfall. And so that's the best way I can answer it. But I would never recommend anyone to just plunge off the side or off the bridge and go straight into your side hustle if you've not done the necessary research and groundwork needed to do so.
Thank you, Mr. Rolle. Another question here. Does the post-funding department assist with the marketing and business plan?
Marketing, yes, so to speak. Business plan, no. What happens in the Access Accelerator, or you let me say A squared because it's a tongue twister. So what happens in A squared is that once a client applies to the organization, they go through or they come to the Client Advisory Services Division. That is headed by Felice Bethel. Once they come to the division itself, the division is split into 3 tiers. There's pre-funding, and pre-funding is the one that assists clients with business plans if there is a need to, or there are clients that come with the business plan already written, fine. There are vouchers that clients can access if they need business plan writing. That is also available. Or we can walk them through, and this is always my favorite approach. Take them through classes or courses that are designed to help them to build and write their own business plans with the assistance of some pre-funding advisors. Why is that my best approach or my favorite approach? Is because it gives you more skin in the game. You're able to impact or affect change. If you're just taking something that someone wrote for you and making it your own, that to me doesn't really give a vested interest more than you sitting by and taking the time to go week for week for week in those courses and writing your own business plan and saying, this is the finished product. When it comes to marketing, post-funding, that's headed by myself, assist clients who are already, so I have a cadre of business advisors, and what they do is assist clients with marketing research or marketing plans or marketing strategies in conjunction with our marketing department, who, for lack of a better word, sometimes market some of our clients to the annoyance of themselves. But clients have so many, it's not like the Access A squared just picks them up or they come on to us and we leave them. We walk with them every step of the way. We have what's called a 3-year handshake, which encourages us to continually assist clients, whether that be with marketing strategies or whether that be with initiatives geared towards ensuring that they are sustainable, or whether that means giving them further assistance with their business plan. We do it all at the Access Accelerator. But in a nutshell, that's how we assist with the business plan and with assisting our clients with marketing strategies or marketing initiatives.
Thank Thank you so much, Mr. Rolle. And are there any further questions for Mr. Rolle? I know that Paige has put in the chat some contact information for A Squared. I love that. So if there is anyone that has any other questions, please unmute now or forever hold your peace. Or if you would like to put them in the chat box, that's fine as well. Okay, Mr. Rolle, thank you. Sorry, was that someone? No, okay. All right, so thank you so much, Mr. Rolle. We really appreciate your time this morning. And we also appreciate everyone that has joined us on their Saturday morning. Up next, we do have Mr. Peter Douglas. And Mr. Peter Douglas is going to focus on building sustained businesses on the Family Islands from an entrepreneurial perspective. Mr. Douglas is, among many things, one of the co-founding members of Central Andros JA Group. So, Mr. Douglas, please come in and tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Good day, everybody. Sorry I don't have a presentation. I'll just speak to you briefly on building sustainable small businesses within the Family Island and the best way to go about it and how we over the years have done a lot of this in not only in junior achievement, but in the sustainable tourism industry. I just want to give you a perspective. When we look at the islands of the Bahamas as a nation, we must understand that over 60% of the economic power of the country sits in New Providence, and the other 40% is scattered throughout the Family Islands. However, the Family Islands have 95% of the natural resources of the country, which what we will call the sovereign wealth of the country. And Andros has 50% of this as the landmass, and also 80% of this as the fresh water and other natural resources that has value for sustaining life. When I say sustaining life, that's human life with agriculture and so on, potential. And the side hustles in the Family Islands are very different from what you would find in a city setting like New Providence or Grand Bahama. A lot of our side hustles come from the natural resources. That is crabbing, fishing, farming, and craft-based natural resources such as straw work, craft jewelry that's based from shells and wood carving and so on. And also our sustainable tourism product, which is nature-based tourism, which is eco tours, fly fishing, deep sea fishing, reef fishing, scuba diving, snorkeling, and also what we call cultural events and cultural interaction through our domestic tourism product with all of our events and festivals. And in this cadre of resources, we have potential for many small side hustles and businesses. And I will go through a few of them. And I will start from the point where we started junior achievement. Central Andros Junior Achievement was the first junior achievement organization outside of New Providence, and we started in 1984. And I was one of the executives, along with Mr. Jeff Birch, Mr. Renda Dean, and several other community leaders. And as the executive director of our program, we had several companies, and we did an incredible job. And over the years, we have processed close to 800 students through our program, and we've sent close to 300 kids off to higher education at COB through scholarships and fundraising. And out of that, we've had several small businesses that have developed within our communities, from small bakeries to craft vendors who are doing well, and also food vendors that are doing well, persons who process and sell natural resources, not only to the hotels, but also through outlets in New Providence. But it's very hard here in the Family Islands because access to funding is virtually I would say impossible. You have to develop your own seed money through savings. As Mr. Rolle mentioned, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And it's slow increments of growth moving along the pathway to get out of the red ocean and to find your own blue ocean. And we did quite a few of that by branding ourselves here in Andros as the sustainable tourism destination, as the ecotourism center and natural nature island of the country. And we did a good job by setting up our large national parks and developing our own brand in our national festival, which is Crab Fest, and branding ourselves. And out of this, we have developed loads of small hustles and businesses. And by branding ourselves, we move out of the red ocean into the blue ocean as a distinct destination, a distinct island, a distinct people with a culture, with a brand, and with a product. So therefore, by doing that with the island, you set the base for a field of small businesses to take off. We also went further now, moving into the tourism industry internationally, as branding ourselves as the bonefish capital of the world. Now, we're not the only area that has bone fishing. Not only, throughout the Bahamas, you could find bonefish in the Yucatan. And if you go around, I think you can also find them in the world in the Cook Islands. And these are the three biggest areas that you could find this species. And also in the Florida Keys. And we had to separate ourselves out of that market. And we did that by developing our own brand of fly fishing. And our brand of fly fishing is called Sustainable Fly Fishing. And our sustainable fly fishing is based on catch and release and not damaging the fish and the habitats where the fish lives. And we also protected that area. Therefore, when we take people to go fishing in those areas, we can guarantee you that you will have a world-class experience because we have protected the area where you're going to go and have this experience. So therefore, the experience is guaranteed. And we're one of the only places in the world that have done that. Also, we could guarantee that we have the biggest bonefish because we have protected the habitat so the fish could grow big, and we don't net them and we don't harvest them to eat. So therefore, the fish is there just waiting to be caught for sport. And once they're caught, they're handled very carefully and released back into the wild so that, they could repopulate themselves. So that's how we move out of the red ocean for sports fishing on the saltwater flats into the blue ocean with our own brand. Now, moving forward, we have developed the island now to be the sustainable tourism destination for the Bahamas. And we just came out of a competition that was put on by the Caribbean Tourism Organization to fund community-based tourism sustainable programs. And what the community-based tourism is taking this concept of sustainability down to the community level, where we could now find funding to help straw vendors set up their brand, to take our food vendors and set up their brand, take our bush medicine people and set up their brand through the the Global Sustainable Tourism Program and guidance. We will be registered as these cultural experience and places that you can go to and just have this experience in Andros. Again, we're separating ourselves out of the crowd and getting into our own blue ocean. And we've just won this grant from the IDB and the CTO, and competing with the rest of our Caribbean brothers, and Andros came out as one of the winners. And we now secured several $100,000 that will come into our community to develop a whole new brand of tourism. And here we again will be able to populate the field with more small businesses through side hustles. We have a pool of bonefish guides, and they want to now take their guiding business and probably as they get older move into the business of owning a resort and setting up a business more substantial than just their own guiding business. So they have the rooms, they have the accommodations, the food, and the rest of the entity of the tourism industry that is derived from their fly fishing. So it's also transitioning a guide into a bigger business owner in his field of tourism, and also bringing our vendors and our straw vendors together so that they can brand their product and their work and share it at a different level within the tourism industry. And this is very timely, because what we have noticed coming out of the COVID era and having to live in the world of COVID, looking forward for at least the next 3 to 4 years, the trends in tourism now is to look for places like Andros and the Family Islands that are small and less crowded and has a lot of open space and more cultural outdoor contacts and activities. So that's the side hustle and the small business opportunities. And also my favorite term that came from Mr. Rolle is getting out of the red ocean and getting into blue ocean and keeping your own brand. And you'd be a pace setter and everybody's trying to catch up with you. It takes a lot of work, innovation, and looking inward instead of outward, taking advantage of what you have available to you and making it special. And that's one of the hard things to do as an entrepreneur, because you might be a good cook, like Mr. Rolle said, you might be very good with your hands or good craft, but you really don't see that potential outside of just looking at it from the outside. You have to go within yourself and own it and say, I could be the best, and see how you could move yourself out of the red ocean into the blue, setting your own brand. And that's very important, especially in the tourism industry. Branding is key. One of the most powerful little brands that I see just develop is the barefoot luxury aspect of the tourism industry, with new resort properties like Karulama and trailblazers like Kamalami Key. These are high-end barefoot luxury properties that you would only think of being in one and only ocean club or some exotic island out in the Exuma, but now they're being attracted to places like Andros, and we're really being developed along these lines. I could keep talking about this all day, but I just want to stop here to go back to accessing funding. That's been the biggest holdback, funding and training and understanding of what it is to set up a small business. A lot of us have the ideas, have the skills, but we don't understand the business principles and the rules that govern success in business. And that's why we were so excited to start JA and to still have JA going on now within the Central Andros community, so that these principles could be rooted in young entrepreneurs from high school level. And with that, I would like to stop and just take questions.
Thank you, Mr. Douglas. So one of the questions I've gotten through the private chat, I have found that I have had to offer additional services to sustain my business. How do I develop partnerships with major corporations sorry, I'm just lost that one. How do I develop partnerships with major corporations to focus on my core business?
Well, develop partnerships with corporations. You have to find out how you could be an asset to a corporation. Nobody is gonna want to be a part of your organization unless they see you as an asset. So you have to find a way to sell yourself or promote yourself or you market yourself. When you go to look for partners, a partner wants to know what you're bringing to the table to strengthen them, and also once you come to the table, how it make you both stronger moving forward. So you have to bring something to the table that's going to attract a partner, especially if the partner is bigger and more powerful than you financially.
Thank you, Mr. Douglas. And another question, are there any funding programs for family islands that can be applied for?
That was just the U.S. Navy helicopter going to Arctic base. Just flew over my house. I couldn't hear anything. Can you repeat that?
Sorry, sure. Are there any funding programs for family islands that we can apply for?
I know that Central Andros, the whole of Andros basically, has won the community-based tourism grant from the IDB and from the Caribbean Tourism Organization. And that's about $264,000 grant, and I think the government will match it. And this is to work with community-based tourism program. And the Bahamas Development Bank will be partnering with the Sustainable Tourism Department of the Ministry of Tourism. And this program will be launched probably starting next month. And funding will be provided through this program for sustainable tourism small businesses. And this would be out of the Central Andros Tourism Office. And I will give you my email address, pdouglas@bahamas.com. You could contact me, and once we're up and going, I will be able to send you all the links so that you could apply. And now these businesses are only here in Andros, unfortunately. And they have to be sustainable tourism based.
Thank you, Mr. Douglas. And remember, if you have questions for Mr. Douglas, please ask now. I will also, if you don't mind, Mr. Douglas, maybe ask Mr. Rolle to also comment on that question of funding for Family Island Ventures.
All right, good morning again. Thank you for allowing me to respond. Also, further to Mr. Douglas's point, relative to ensuring that you access those partnerships or strategic partnerships from ventures or from other organizations. What I found successful, or what I found that I did when I was a salesperson before moving into SBDC, is that you want to ensure that you're always visible. And so one thing that I did to ensure that I made those connections was joined in organizations such as Rotary, Red Cross. I became president of the PTA just to get out there and see, where these industries were that the parents were working at. I started to go to various schools and giving or sponsoring awards. I actually have 2 awards that I've sponsored, and that gave me a foothold because obviously someone works in these organizations that are in, or at these places that you want to be in, that are in one of these segments. And so if you join places like Rotary as a business owner, or just start doing sponsorships or doing things in the community, you gain partnerships, and those persons can help you get a foot in the door, as well as providing mutually beneficial propositions. If you're a small business, there's something that you do that large organization may not be able to do, or some type of product or service that you can help them enhance that they may not have thought of. So providing mutually beneficial propositions also helps you to gain those partnerships. And speaking to the funding possibilities for small islands, I wanted to ask Mr. Douglas, well, I'll respond, and I wanted to ask him, what do you think we can do to make persons in the or businesses in the islands more attractive to the FIs? Because they're usually Nassau or Grand Bahama and Abaco centric, and not so much with the small islands. So I wanted to ask about that for when I'm finished. But we did have at the Access Accelerator a while ago fishing and farming grants, as well as preschool grants, and we try to offer opportunities as best we can with the funding, the limited funding that we have. Apart from going through an FI with an A² regular program, those grants are not available at the moment because they're none running or none currently running. But there is the continuous A² program where we will, or the government will, be a guarantor of up to 75 or 90% in some instances. And you would have a matching grant and loan from an FI if you have a viable business that can be funded that way. But apart from the fishing and farming grant and the preschool grants and other grants that we've had specifically geared to the islands, which I'm sure we'll bring back in some measure or form later on, we currently are running the RCCL program, which is a Royal Caribbean program, and it's geared towards assisting persons in the tourism industry access funding through Royal Caribbean. So that's a program that is currently running that persons can apply for, as well as the regular A Squared program, until such time that more tailored programs for the family islands come on stream, which I can almost guarantee will be soon.
Mr. Rolle,
Yes, sir.
I would like to ask you a question. I have several newly trained sustainable fly fishing guides, and I would like to seek some help for them through the Royal Caribbean Cruise Line grants. How do we go about it? I didn't even know it existed.
The problem with that one is it is relegated to specific islands. I do not think Andros is one of them, but I can confirm for you, and I will ensure to let you know. But there's an application form that can be accessed from the A Squared or the Access Accelerator website, and it gives them all the credentials and things that they would need in order to apply if their business is in New Providence or one of the approved islands.
Well, it should be, because I know up in Coco Key and the Berry Islands, and 50% or more of the employees there are all Androsians.
And Berry Islands is one of those businesses. Thank you, Paige. My director, or deputy director of marketing, is now telling me that it's open to New Providence, Grand Bahama, and Berry Islands. So definitely those Berry Island persons will be able to apply.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you both so much. Are there any more questions for our presenters? I see a hand raised. Please go ahead and unmute and you can ask your question. Thank you. Clayton Gardner.
Yeah, arrived late to the party, but let me ask this question. I had a seminar actually on Thursday past with the entrepreneurial fund, Mr. Mike Cunningham. I was the host. But I want to ask the Access Accelerator persons in the room, in terms of funding for a small business, what do you do equity funding as well? And with the SBDC, really, it's outside of the grants, the different grants. I know they come from yourselves, but if I want a loan, I come through you, but then I have to still go to a bank to get the actual cash. Could you kind of just highlight that aspect for me? And I think Paige is related to our director of marketing. I think I overheard the whole thing. What is the importance of marketing in a small business, and how should a small business approach marketing? Those are my two questions, if I may.
All right, Mr. Gardner, thank you for those questions. So as to your first question, I think everyone in the call should be aware that businesses can be funded in one of two ways. There's either debt funding, where they get a loan, or equity funding, where they take on a business partner or someone who has a vested interest or stake in their business. At the A Squared, we do offer opportunities for persons to get either debt funding or equity funding. We don't actually facilitate the loan portion of it, as Mr. Gardner alluded to correctly. What we do at the A Squared is offer a guarantee to the clients. And so that guarantee is able to be used with the FIs or financial institutions in order to get them to be able to qualify in most instances, and to note that the government has actually backed or is guaranteeing the loan that you'll be getting. With equity funding, it's a bit different, because what happens is the principals of those equity organizations take a stake or a vested interest in your business. And so they may say, you're looking for 200,000, we'll give you 100, but we want 15% ownership in the business. That's in a nutshell what equity funding does. And the reason SBDC or A Squared operates as a conduit between the two is because of the fact that we have those relationships that these persons or the persons are now accessing. We have access to those persons. We are now guaranteeing those loans. We provide the matching grant if it's approved by the board. We're able to assist with the business plan and the revisions using the expertise that we have or the resources that we have available to us. So it's really the assistance as well as the grant funding, as well as the expertise that we would have, that we are giving to our clients when they come to us. Most times, if a client goes directly to a financial institution or an equity partner, it's taken with a grain of salt, and they're not so inclined to do so. But if they're coming with the backing of an organization that's been around for several years and that has had success with other clients, then the chances are greatly heightened with those persons being able to access funding. I think marketing, just to answer, because I know Paige isn't one of the presenters, but marketing for a small business or any business as you can speak of is perhaps the lifeblood of that business. Businesses fail not because they are not making sales or not making money or their expenses are too high. They fail because people aren't out there, or they're not out there selling themselves to the wider public. Business is a microcosm of the macro, society being the macro. So you have to be able to market yourself and continually stay abreast of the moving trends. If the market is going in the trend of, let's say, cargo pants, and you're still selling long jeans, the chances of you sustaining or being viable to an ever-changing market are slim to none. And so if you are constantly marketing, people are constantly seeing your brand. When I think of chicken, KFC pops to mind, because it's always there, it's always visible. If I say just do it, people know I speak about Nike. These people have made brands for themselves and have continuously marketed themselves. And it's the same with any other small business or business aspiring to grow and develop themselves in the market. I hope I answered your question, Mr. Gardner.
Leo, you may be onto something there, because another local case in point is Diagula. I guess now he's back in his business after the 16th of September. But Superwash, I mean, you can't miss it. It's all, especially in terms of the radio station. Any radio station you go on, you will hear I think it's Hope and Cookie, as it relates to Superwash. So you're right, and that was one of the points that Mr. Cunningham, chairman of the Venture Capital Fund, alluded to in my seminar on Thursday night, that that marketing, you gotta dedicate some dollars to that. I haven't always done it in my business as it relates to what I do, but yeah, I think the point has been driven home in that regard. And thanks for your answer in regards to the how you do the funding. One of the things he mentioned too was that made an impact on me. I mean, of course, as an accountant, I should know this, but the business plan, the whole aspect of that business plan, when you come with that business plan, that got to be tight. That got to be right.
And definitely two of the things that those at Venture Fund look for are your break-even analysis and your profit margins. And they don't want Gussie over economics. They want the real, what is it that you think you can do and how you think you're going to do it. And you have to be able to justify those profit margins. So that business plan, it must be, like you said, airtight.
Yeah, and the final point I'll make before I turn it back over to Ms. Selena is he mentioned that, hey, when you come in to make that presentation, Leo, you may know the technical side and you may know how to make the bread and so forth and so on. That may be your passion, but the numbers got to be right, and bring your accountant along so that, when those questions come, because you and the accountant would have, quote unquote, put the business plan together. So when now the board or the panel looks at that financial side of things and they turn to that aspect of it, that accountant is right there to defend those numbers, if you will.
Yeah, and that's what I mentioned earlier. Usually when you hear, especially when a client is making a pitch, even if the accountant is there, we still try to ask questions of the client just to see if we don't expect every client to be an accountant, that's asinine. But you have to have a working knowledge of how your accountant or whoever prepared your financials arrived at the assumptions that they arrived at. And so I laughed because I remember one client making a pitch and we asked a question and the accountant was having some audio challenges and so he couldn't respond and the person pretended like they were looking for something and then when we looked they dropped off the call, which clearly means that they don't quite understand what it is or how that accountant arrived at those assumptions. So you have to be able to balance both. But yes, definitely bring your accountant along because that person will be held responsible for the financials of the organization.
Thank you so much again. And what I've done is I've just put in some information in the chat. My Inc. does offer free marketing consultations, sorry. So for anybody that wants to avail of that who is participating today, please email info@myinc.marketing. Are there any further questions for our presenters? Okay, silence gives consent for us to end this meeting. But before we go, I just want to say again, thank you so much to Mr. Douglas. Thank you again to Mr. Rolle for participating today and giving us so much information. There are links to in the chat again. Before I close out, I'll give it a moment so that people can go through and capture the information for both Access Accelerator and also for Mr. Douglas in reference to the Andros grant. And I want to give you the opportunity as well. Do any of the presenters want to close with a word? Okay, all right. Sorry, Mr. Rolle, did you unmute?
No, I just wanted to say thank you for the opportunity and ensure that if you have any questions, queries, or if that you're one looking to open or start your own business, that you give us a call at the A Squared and help us to, or let us help you turn your side hustle to your main bustle.
Thank you, Mr. Rolle. And we are JA Bahamas is very much looking forward to working with you with future ventures as well. Mr. Douglas, would you like to say anything in closing? Okay. All right. So again, thank you everyone for joining us. I hope you have gotten the information in the chat. If not, if you need any additional information, this meeting has been recorded and will be sent out to all of our participants next week so that you can review and also give some information on how it is that you can reach either Mr. Douglas or Mr. Rolle at Access Accelerator. So on behalf of JA Bahamas Junior Achievement Alumni Association, I would like to wish everybody a happy Saturday. Thank you for coming.